I hit the $50 million jackpot 6 months ago and kept it secret. Yesterday, a local news story outed me as the mystery winner. Now my estranged family and long-lost friends are blowing up my phone. I never thought I'd be writing this post, but here I am, sitting in my modest apartment, staring at my phone as it vibrates nonstop with messages and calls from people I haven't spoken to in years. How did I get here? Well, it all started 6 months ago when I decided to buy a lottery ticket on a whim. I'm not usually a gambling man. In fact, I've always been pretty frugal. Growing up in a lower middle-class family, I learned the value of $1 early on. But that day, something just told me to go for it. Maybe it was the way the sun hit the convenience store window, or maybe it was the fact that I'd just gotten passed over for a promotion at work. Whatever it was, I bought the ticket and promptly forgot about it. 2 days later, I was watching the news while eating my usual microwave dinner when the lottery numbers flashed across the screen. I nearly choked on my mashed potatoes. Every single number matched. I double-checked, triple-checked, and then sat in stunned silence for what felt like hours. $50 million. It was more money than I could even comprehend. The first thing I did was call in sick to work the next day. I needed time to think, to process. I knew that if I didn't handle this right, it could ruin my life. I'd heard all the horror stories about lottery winners going broke, losing friends, being hounded by long-lost relatives. I didn't want that to be me. So, I made a decision. I would keep it a secret. At least for a while. I contacted a lawyer and a financial advisor, sworn to secrecy. We set up a trust to claim the winnings anonymously. I quit my job, telling everyone I'd gotten a great opportunity with a tech startup that required me to move. In reality, I stayed right where I was, in my same apartment, driving my same car. For 6 months, I lived a double life. To the outside world, I was the same old me, just working remotely now. But behind closed doors, I was carefully planning my future. I paid off all my debts, set up investments, and made anonymous donations to causes I cared about. I even started a small business as a cover for my newfound financial freedom. It was working perfectly. Until yesterday. I was grabbing coffee at my usual spot when I noticed people giving me strange looks. The barista, usually chatty, seemed nervous as she handed me my order. It wasn't until I got home and opened my laptop that I understood why. There, on the local news website, was a headline that made my blood run cold. Mystery $50 million lottery winner identified. Local man, my name, claims jackpot. My heart started racing. How did they find out? I'd been so careful. It turns out, a clerk at the convenience store where I bought the ticket had recognized me from the security footage. He'd kept quiet for months, but finally sold the story to a reporter looking for a scoop. Within hours, my carefully constructed secret life came crashing down. My phone started blowing up with messages and calls. Facebook friend requests poured in. My email inbox filled faster than I could delete them. First, it was my immediate family. My parents, who I hadn't spoken to in years after a falling out over my career choices, suddenly wanted to reconnect. My sister, who had cut ties with me when I couldn't afford to help with her mounting debts, was now sending me pictures of her kids, calling me uncle, my name, as if nothing had ever happened. Then came the extended family. Cousins I barely remembered, aunts and uncles I'd never met. All of them had a sob story, a business idea, or a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity they wanted to share with me. The friends were next. High school classmates I hadn't spoken to in over a decade. College roommates who had ghosted me years ago. Ex-girlfriends who had broken my heart. All of them acting like we were still close, like no time had passed at all. Hey man, long time no see. We should catch up. Remember me? We had biology together in 10th grade. I've always regretted losing touch with you. Want to grab a coffee? It was overwhelming, to say the least. But what really got to me were the messages from my ex-best friend, Mike. Mike and I had been inseparable since kindergarten. We went through everything together, first crushes, high school drama, college applications. He was the brother I never had. Until 3 years ago. Mike had always been a bit of a dreamer, always chasing the next big thing. When he came to me with a guaranteed investment opportunity, I was skeptical. He needed $20,000 to get in on the ground floor of what he swore would be the next Amazon. I didn't have that kind of money, and even if I did, it seemed too risky. He didn't take my refusal well. Accused me of not believing in him, of being a bad friend. The argument got heated, and things were said that couldn't be unsaid. He stormed out of my apartment, and I hadn't heard from him since. Until today. His message popped up on my phone, casual as can be. Hey buddy, saw the news. Congrats. Listen, I've got this amazing business idea I want to run by you. I know we had our differences, but I always knew you'd make it big someday. How about we meet up and bury the hatchet? It was like a punch to the gut. 3 years of silence, and this is what brings him back? Not an apology, not a genuine attempt to reconnect, but a thinly veiled attempt to get at my newfound wealth. As I sat there, staring at my phone, watching the notifications pile up, I felt a mix of emotions I couldn't quite sort out. Anger at the invasion of privacy. Hurt at the realization that for so many people, I was now just a dollar sign. Anxiety about what this meant for my future. And underneath it all, a deep sadness for the relationships I thought I had, now revealed to be so shallow. I needed to do something, to get control of the situation. But what? How do you deal with a tidal wave of greed and false affection? How do you separate the genuine well-wishers from the opportunists? And how do you protect yourself without becoming bitter and paranoid? I decided to start with my parents. Despite our differences, they were still my family. I took a deep breath and called them back. The conversation was awkward at first. Years of unspoken resentment and hurt hung between us like a thick fog. But as we talked, really talked for the first time in years, I realized something. They weren't calling about the money. They were calling because the news story had scared them. We thought something had happened to you, my mom said, her voice cracking. When we couldn't reach you for so long, and then to see your name in the paper like that. I felt a weight lift off my chest. We talked for hours, clearing the air, apologizing for past mistakes. It wasn't perfect, and we still had a lot to work through, but it was a start. I decided to fly out to see them next week, to reconnect properly. Encouraged by this, I started going through the rest of the messages. I created a system, genuine concern in one category, obvious cash grabs in another, and a third for those I wasn't sure about yet. My sister's messages went into the third category. Her sudden reappearance in my life was suspicious, but I couldn't deny the pang I felt seeing pictures of my niece and nephew. Kids I'd never met because of our falling out. I decided to respond cautiously, suggesting a video call to catch up. As for the others, I drafted a careful response, thank you for reaching out. As you can imagine, I'm overwhelmed with messages right now. I appreciate your congratulations, but I'm not making any financial decisions or commitments at this time. I hope you understand. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I sent it to everyone in the obvious cash grab category and most in the not sure category. Then I turned off my phone and took a walk to clear my head. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I hired a PR firm to help manage the sudden attention. They advised me to make a short statement to the press, acknowledging the win but asking for privacy. It helped stem the tide of messages somewhat, but my life had still irrevocably changed. I had to move out of my apartment. Once my address got out, I started getting letters and unexpected visitors. The PR firm helped me find a secure, gated community where I could have some peace. My trip to see my parents was emotional but healing. We had a lot to work through, but by the end of the week, we were laughing together like we hadn't in years. I set up a trust fund for them, enough to cover any medical expenses and let them retire comfortably, but not so much that it would drastically change their lives. The video call with my sister was tenser. She started off by apologizing, but it quickly became clear she was hoping for a bailout. I listened to her story, mounting debts, a husband out of work, the kids needing braces. It was hard not to feel for her situation. In the end, I agreed to help, but with conditions. I would pay for the kids' medical expenses directly and set up college funds for them. For my sister and her husband, I offered to pay for financial counseling and job training programs. It wasn't the blank check she was hoping for, but it was what I felt comfortable with. As for the others, most faded away after my generic response. A few persistent ones kept trying, each message more desperate than the last. I blocked the worst offenders and ignored the rest. But Mike was persistent. He kept messaging, each time with a different angle. First, it was the business idea. Then, reminiscing about old times. Finally, he resorted to guilt-tripping, bringing up every favor he'd ever done for me. I almost broke and responded several times. Despite everything, he had been my best friend for most of my life. But every time I started to type a reply, I remembered the look on his face when he'd stormed out of my apartment 3 years ago. The cruel words he'd flung at me. I couldn't bring myself to open that door again. As the weeks turned into months, things began to settle into a new normal. The press lost interest in me as newer, more exciting stories came along. The flood of messages slowed to a trickle. I started to focus on what I really wanted to do with my life now that money wasn't a concern. I'd always been passionate about education, so I started looking into ways to make a difference there. I set up a scholarship fund for underprivileged kids in my hometown. It felt good to give back, to potentially change lives the way mine had been changed. I also started traveling, checking off items on my bucket list. I saw the Northern Lights in Iceland, went on a safari in Tanzania, walked the Great Wall of China. Each trip helped me gain perspective on my new life and the person I wanted to be. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were times when the loneliness hit hard. Times when I missed the simplicity of my old life. Times when I worried that every new person I met was only interested in my money. One particularly low day, I found myself parked outside Mike's house. I don't even remember driving there. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, debating whether to knock on his door. In the end, I drove away. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. And maybe that's okay. Instead, I joined a support group for lottery winners. It sounds ridiculous, I know, but it helped more than I can say. To talk to people who really understood what I was going through, who had faced the same challenges and come out the other side. They helped me navigate the complex emotions that came with sudden wealth and lost relationships. Slowly but surely, I started to build a new life for myself. I made new friends through my charitable work and my travels. I reconnected with a few old friends who had reached out genuinely, not for money but out of real concern and care. I even started dating again, though I was always cautious about revealing the full extent of my wealth. It's been a year now since my win was made public. Looking back, I can hardly believe how much has changed. I'm not the same person I was before all this happened. In some ways, I'm better, more confident, more purposeful. In other ways, I'm more cautious, more guarded. I've learned a lot about human nature, both the good and the bad. I've seen incredible generosity and appalling greed. I've reconnected with some people and said goodbye to others. I've learned that money can solve a lot of problems, but it can also create new ones. My relationship with my family has improved, though it's still a work in progress. My parents and I talk regularly now, and I've gotten to know my niece and nephew. My sister and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship, though trust is still an issue. I've had to cut ties with some people, including Mike. His messages eventually stopped, but not before he tried to sue me for a share of the winnings, claiming he had contributed to the purchase of the ticket. The case was thrown out, but it was the final nail in the coffin of our friendship. As for the money itself, I've tried to be smart with it. Most of it is invested, with a portion set aside for charitable giving. I live comfortably but not extravagantly. I've found that beyond a certain point, more money doesn't really make you happier. What does make me happy is using this incredible stroke of luck to make a difference. The scholarship fund I set up has already helped dozens of kids go to college who otherwise couldn't have afforded it. I've funded research into renewable energy and contributed to wildlife conservation efforts. It's not always easy to figure out the best way to help, but I'm learning. I still have moments of doubt, moments when I wonder if winning the lottery was really a blessing or a curse. But then I'll get a letter from one of the scholarship recipients, telling me about their dreams and how the scholarship is helping them achieve them. Or I'll see a news report about a breakthrough in clean energy technology that my funding helps support. And I remember that with great power, or in this case, great wealth, comes great responsibility. I don't know what the future holds. But I do know that I'm committed to using this incredible opportunity to make the world a little bit better, in whatever way I can. And at the end of the day, isn't that what truly matters? To anyone out there who's dreaming of hitting the jackpot, my advice is this: be careful what you wish for. Money can change your life, but it can't change who you are at your core. It can't buy happiness or true friendship. It can open doors, but it's up to you to walk through them and make something meaningful of the opportunity. And if you do win, keep it quiet for as long as you can. Take the time to process, to plan, to figure out what really matters to you. Don't let the money change you, let it amplify the best parts of who you already are. As for me, I'm still figuring it all out. But I'm grateful for the chance to do so, and for the lessons I've learned along the way. Who knows? Maybe in another year, I'll have a whole new perspective to share. Life has a funny way of surprising you, lottery winnings or not.